The seeds of Nazi Germany's rise were sown in the ashes of a defeated and demoralized nation. The First World War had left Germany in ruins, both physically and psychologically. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh reparations and territorial losses on Germany, further fueling resentment and instability. The German economy, already weakened by the war, was plunged into hyperinflation during the 1920s. The Weimar Republic, Germany's fledgling democracy established after the war, struggled to maintain order amidst economic chaos and political extremism. The global economic depression that began in 1929 exacerbated Germany's woes. Unemployment skyrocketed, businesses failed, and millions were thrown into poverty. The social fabric of German society began to fray as people lost faith in traditional political parties and institutions. In this climate of despair and disillusionment, extremist ideologies like Nazism found fertile ground to take root. The Nazi Party, led by the charismatic but deeply disturbed Adolf Hitler, exploited the widespread anger and fear gripping Germany. Hitler was a master propagandist who appealed to the basest instincts of the German people. He offered simple solutions to complex problems, blaming Jews, communists, and other scapegoats for Germany's misfortunes. Hitler promised to restore Germany to its former glory, rebuild the economy, and create a racially pure 1,000-year Reich. The Nazi Party's message resonated with many Germans, particularly those who had lost everything in the war and the Depression. They were drawn to Hitler's promises of national revival and his scapegoating of marginalized groups. The Nazi Party's paramilitary organization, the Sturmabteilung, also played a key role in its rise to power. The Sturmabteilung, known as the Brown Shirts, terrorized political opponents, intimidated voters, and created an atmosphere of fear and violence that benefited the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party's electoral success in the early 1930s was a testament to the party's effective propaganda, the appeal of Hitler's message, and the growing desperation of the German people. In the 1930 federal election, the Nazis won 18.3% of the vote, becoming the second largest party in the Reichstag, the German parliament. The party's success shocked many observers who had dismissed the Nazis as a fringe group of extremists. The Nazi Party's growing popularity alarmed many of Germany's traditional elites, but they underestimated Hitler's ambition and the ruthlessness of the Nazi movement. In January 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg, a World War I hero and a symbol of the old order, reluctantly appointed Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. Hindenburg and his conservative allies believed they could control Hitler and use him to advance their own interests. They were tragically mistaken. Hitler's appointment as Chancellor marked a turning point in German history. Within months, he had effectively dismantled the Weimar Republic and established a totalitarian dictatorship. In February 1933, the Reichstag building was set on fire, an event the Nazis blamed on communists. Hitler used the fire as a pretext to suspend civil liberties and launch a brutal crackdown on political opponents. The Enabling Act, passed by the Reichstag in March 1933, effectively gave Hitler dictatorial powers. The act allowed the Nazi government to pass laws without the consent of the Reichstag, effectively neutralizing the German parliament. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler was free to consolidate his power and eliminate all opposition to his rule. Once in power, the Nazi Party moved swiftly to silence all opposition and create a totalitarian state. All other political parties were banned, and their leaders were arrested or driven into exile. Trade unions were abolished, and their assets were seized by the Nazi Party. The press was brought under strict government control, and freedom of speech was effectively eliminated. Hitler's secret police, the Gestapo, instilled terror in the hearts of the German people. The Gestapo, operating outside the constraints of the law, could arrest, torture, and even murder anyone suspected of opposing the Nazi regime. Concentration camps, originally established to imprison political opponents, were expanded and transformed into instruments of terror and genocide. The Nazi Party's control over German society extended to all aspects of life. Education was Nazified, with curricula rewritten to glorify German nationalism, militarism, and racial purity. Youth organizations, such as the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls, indoctrinated young people with Nazi ideology and prepared them for service to the state. The Nazi regime's grip on power was further strengthened by the party's control over the economy. The Nazis implemented a program of autarky, aiming to make Germany self-sufficient in food and raw materials. Public works programs, such as the construction of the Autobahn, were launched to reduce unemployment and stimulate the economy. The Nazi regime also engaged in massive rearmament, violating the terms of the Treaty of Versailles and setting the stage for future conflict. At the heart of Nazi ideology lay a toxic brew of racial theories, nationalism, and anti-Semitism. The Nazis believed in the superiority of the Aryan race, a mythical master race they falsely identified with the German people. They viewed Jews, Slavs, Roma, and other groups as inferior races that threatened the purity and strength of the German nation. The Nazi regime embarked on a campaign of social engineering aimed at creating a racially pure and homogeneous German society. This campaign targeted various groups deemed undesirable or outsiders, subjecting them to persecution, discrimination, and ultimately genocide. The Nazis' obsession with racial purity led to the enactment of a series of discriminatory laws and policies. The Nuremberg Laws, passed in 1935, stripped Jews of their German citizenship and prohibited marriage and sexual relations between Jews and non-Jews. These laws were a key step in the Nazi regime's systematic persecution of Jews, marking a significant escalation in their campaign of discrimination and dehumanization. The Nazi regime also targeted other groups deemed undesirable or asocial, including Roma, Sinti, homosexuals, people with disabilities, and political opponents. These groups were subjected to persecution, imprisonment, forced sterilization, and even murder. The Nazi regime's campaign of social engineering was a horrifying testament to the dangers of racial hatred and the brutality of totalitarian regimes.